somewhere on the outer hull of a spacecraft, riding through the vacuum of space. Cosmic radiation blasting past at lethal intensity. Temperatures dropping to nearly absolute zero. Something is alive. Not a human, not an animal you'd expect. Something smaller than a grain of sand. And it's completely fine. Meet the tardigrade, also called a water bear. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why scientists call it one of the most indestructible creatures on Earth, maybe in the universe. Here's the question that should terrify you a little. If you were exposed to open space for even 10 seconds, you'd lose consciousness from lack of oxygen. Within 2 minutes, your body would suffer fatal damage. No suit, no chance. But in 2007, the European Space Agency launched thousands of tardigrades into low Earth orbit, strapped them to the outside of a spacecraft, and exposed them directly to the vacuum of space. No pressure, no oxygen. Full solar and cosmic radiation. When the capsule returned, many of them were still alive. Some even reproduced afterward. So what do these creatures know that your body doesn't? Let's rewind. Tardigrades are microscopic animals, usually under a millimeter long, with 8 stubby legs and claws, giving them a slow, bear-like walk under a microscope, which is exactly where the nickname comes from. They live almost everywhere: moss, soil, deep ocean trenches, Himalayan mountaintops, even your backyard puddle. Over 1,000 species have been identified, but their real secret isn't where they live. It's what they can do when things go wrong. When a tardigrade senses extreme drought, radiation, freezing cold, or crushing pressure, it doesn't fight the environment. It shuts down. Almost completely. This state is called cryptobiosis, from Greek meaning hidden life. The tardigrade pulls in its legs, curls into a tiny ball called a ton, and reduces its metabolic activity to less than 0.01% of normal. For comparison, that's like a car engine running so slow, it would take years to notice the wheels moving. At that point, by almost every measurable standard, the tardigrade is not alive in any active sense. No visible breathing, no detectable metabolism. Scientists sometimes describe it as biologically suspended. Not quite dead, not quite alive, existing in a kind of a limbo most organisms could never survive. And here's where it gets stranger. In this state, tardigrades can survive being dried out to less than 3% of their normal water content. Most living cells would rupture and die from that kind of dehydration. Human cells are roughly 60% water. Losing even 15 to 20% puts organs at risk of complete failure. So how does a tardigrade avoid turning into microscopic dust when its cells lose almost all their water? This is where the science gets genuinely wild. Tardigrades produce a special protein, unofficially nicknamed tardigrade-specific intrinsically disordered proteins, or TDPs. When water disappears, these proteins turn into a glass-like substance inside the cell. Researchers call this vitrification. Instead of the cell's internal structure collapsing into chaos, it essentially freezes in place, like amber preserving an insect, protecting DNA, proteins, and membranes until water returns. When moisture comes back, sometimes years, sometimes decades later, the glass state dissolves, the tardigrade rehydrates, and normal biological function resumes like nothing happened. There's a documented case of tardigrades revived after being dried out for over 30 years in a moss sample. 30 years of biological pause, and then life continues. Now let's talk about radiation, because this is where tardigrades separate themselves from almost every organism on the planet. Humans exposed to roughly 5 to 10 gray units of radiation face a high risk of death from radiation sickness. Tardigrades have survived doses of over 5,000 gray. Some studies report tolerance up to 4,000 times the lethal human dose. The reason isn't magic, it's DNA repair. Tardigrades produce a unique protein called Dsup, short for damage suppressor. Dsup physically binds to the tardigrade's DNA, forming a protective shield around the genetic material, reducing damage from radiation and reactive oxygen species. Even when breaks do occur, tardigrades have remarkably efficient repair systems that stitch the DNA back together with unusual precision. In 2016, Japanese researchers even inserted the Dsup gene into human cells in a lab setting. The result? Those human cells showed significantly increased resistance to X-ray radiation. This isn't science fiction. It's published, peer-reviewed research. Though to be clear, this doesn't mean humans could survive space unprotected. It means a single gene from a near microscopic animal could someday influence how we protect astronauts or even cancer patients undergoing radiation therapy. Let's pause on that for a second, because it's easy to miss how big that is. A creature you could lose in a pinch of dust might hold biological information relevant to human space travel and medicine. But radiation and dehydration aren't even the full list. Tardigrades have survived temperatures as low as -272 degrees Celsius, just barely above absolute zero, and as high as 150 degrees Celsius boiling point and beyond heat. They've endured pressures nearly 6 times greater than the deepest part of the ocean. They've been frozen, boiled, irradiated, vacuum-sealed, and rehydrated, and walked away, quite literally, on their 8 tiny legs. So why can't we do any of this? Human cells are optimized for a stable, narrow range of conditions: consistent temperature, consistent hydration, protected DNA, steady oxygen supply. We are, biologically speaking, built for comfort, not extremes. Our repair systems handle everyday wear and tear, not radiation levels thousands of times beyond lethal thresholds. Our cells don't have a vitrification backup plan. When we dehydrate past a certain point or absorb dangerous radiation, there's no glass-like shield stepping in to save us. It's important to note, tardigrades aren't invincible under normal living conditions. Cryptobiosis is a survival response to extreme environmental stress, not a party trick they use daily. Outside of that dormant state, they're just as vulnerable as any small organism, eaten by predators, affected by pollution, sensitive to their everyday habitat. And there's still real scientific debate here too. Some researchers argue tardigrade radiation resistance research needs more replication across species before broad claims are made. Others are actively studying whether Dsup-like elements could ever meaningfully help human radiation resistance outside a lab. This is active, evolving science, not settled fact. So why does any of this matter to you? Because tardigrades are quietly reshaping how scientists think about the boundaries of life itself, what survival actually requires, and how resilience might be borrowed, engineered, or better understood through nature's oldest survivors. Some scientists even study tardigrades to understand what long-duration human spaceflight to Mars might require in terms of radiation shielding and cellular protection. The tardigrade didn't evolve to conquer space, it evolved to survive a drying puddle of moss. But by accident, evolution built one of the toughest biological systems ever discovered, one so effective, it functions in an environment its ancestors never even knew existed. Which brings us back to the real question. It's not just why tardigrades can survive extremes and we can't. It's what else is hiding in nature's smallest creatures that we haven't discovered yet.